Before I was 63 years of age, I always talk to myself, how did I feel if I felt dizzy? I never felt dizzy before 63. And I always wanted to have the feeling, how come people would faint who felt dizzy? And then as time goes on, I got my first one about 3-4 years ago. And I walk, when I was walking, I walk as if I was walking in the cloud. You know, my steps are floating. And then that's my dizziness. And I clearly remember I felt dizzy because I couldn't sleep well last night, the night before. 1 or 2 hours of sleep. And so that's how I felt. And so everybody would have this kind of vocation happening. That's an indication to us that life is ephemeral. It's not very long. Say 100 years, within 100 years, you exist within 100 years. We may not even live to 100 years. I've seen people in meditation class, they came and they go. I mean, they came and they disappeared. That's life. So it's a fact of life, but sometimes we wonder, where did we come from? Why do we have to go through all these and then we passed away from this world? And within this time that when we were living, we've gone through a lot. Maybe if you are very young, you may not have gone through, but I have gone through a lot, and some people here have gone through a lot. What have you gone through depends on the kind of karmic energy that you created for yourself. So we came with an attached karma. That's the reason why we reincarnate. And some people contain more wholesome karma and less unwholesome. And some people more unwholesome and less wholesome. So whether you are happier than the others or you're not as happy as others, it depends on how much karma, bad karma we have created previously, in previous lives. The Buddha said, once you serve this life, don't get back into the reincarnation again. After you serve this life, don't get back into reincarnation. Don't roll into another form again. You are Mr. Jackson, and then we're Mr. Wilson in your next life, and then you get in all kinds of reincarnations and sufferings, and we call it the samsara. But the Buddha said, you cannot control it. You cannot control your own reincarnation. But actually, you created your own reincarnation. And the Buddha introduced 10 ways, broadly speaking, how to get away from samsara. To get away from samsara, you have to be free of all karma that you created for yourself. But can you be free of all karma that you have created for yourself? Look at what you have done in this lifetime. Wholesome deeds, unwholesome deeds, wholesome words, wholesome speeches, and unwholesome speeches. And have you been involved with deeds and actions, deeds and words and speeches that involve a lot of bad karma? You know. Every thought creates karma, not just the action. So our karma has been, basically to most people, they have more unwholesome karma than karma. and then you go into the next reincarnation. One of the ways to get away from reincarnation is, actually to get away from reincarnation, you have to be completely free of bad karma, which is almost impossible. It is quite impossible that you purify yourself of all karma so that you don't get into the next reincarnation. The Buddha mentioned a way that we can get away from samsara even though we haven't purified our karma. That is to go to another world after everybody has to die anyway. When you die, don't get into samsara, the Buddha said. Went to the Pure Land first. Amitabha Buddha created the Pure Land where you reincarnate into that land, and that land is a land of non-retrogression. That means if you can go to that world on death, then you don't get into samsara, but you will be practicing in that world under the patronage and teaching of Amitabha and Avalokitesvara and all the other bodhisattvas until you purify your karma. That's what we call the Pure Land approach. That we have to talk about it later. And what we're talking about now, about consciousness, is how not to create more unwholesome karma, how to know that what are you thinking about, and how our consciousness created karma. So you have a deeper and a better understanding of yourself. And this is quite important. And right now we are studying the last consciousness, which is the eighth consciousness. And we know that here we have the first 5 consciousnesses, and then the 6th, and then the 7th, and then the 8th. So altogether we have, every sentient being has 8 consciousnesses. We call it the 8 vijnana. Vijnana means consciousness. The first 5, do you still remember the first 5 consciousnesses that we have? The eye consciousness, the nose consciousness, the ear consciousness, the tongue consciousness, and the body consciousness. We all know that we have the eye consciousness, right? And the first 5, they are called the perceptual consciousness. They are the front end consciousness. And then we also study the 6th consciousness, which is the mano consciousness, being the very active manager, managing the first 5 consciousness. The 6th consciousness determined where you're going to go next in your next life, and would you be able to go into the spiritual path. If you involve your 6th consciousness with all unwholesome deeds and actions, you'll roll into a very bad reincarnation in your next life. But if your 6th consciousness plus the first 5 are actually working to purify yourself, you're going to the spiritual path. So you actually, the mano, actually, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, plus your mentality, they could pull you down to hell. They can also pull you up to heaven. Depends on how you use them. But most people use them in the bad way. Gambling, stealing, sexual misconduct, misdeeds, and you name them, you know. This, the first 6 consciousnesses are like that. The 7th consciousness is the ego, of course. Everything you think about, there's always the ego working, interacting with it. Then we're talking about the 8th consciousness, which is the alaya consciousness, and that is a storage consciousness. The reason I'm bringing out this slide is, in addition to just doing a review, we're telling you, we're all studying that the 8th consciousness, other than its own consciousness, also have other concomitant mental functions interacting inside with the 8 consciousnesses. Not just the consciousness itself. We call that the mental functions, the concomitant mental functions, working with your own consciousness at the same time to carry out deeds and words and speeches and thinking and all that. The first 5 consciousness have 34 mental functions, which these are the 5 categories of mental functions. Omnipresent functions, that means whenever consciousness arises, these functions have to work with them at the same time. Attention, contact, sensation, perception, and volition working at the same time with the consciousness. Otherwise, the consciousness would not work. These are the omnipresent. That means they have to be present. The first 5, 34 mental functions working with the first 5. The 6, 51 mental functions. The 6 consciousness working with 51. If we consider every consciousness as the king, all these kings have their ministers helping them to carry out good deeds, bad deeds, and all that. 6 consciousness have all the 51 working. Your 6th consciousness, yours, mine, have the 51 mental functions working with them. They have 50 each. The 6th consciousness has 51, all of them, the ministers interacting to carry out what you're doing. The 7th consciousness, being the ego consciousness, only have 18. We already have studied this. This is just a review. Now the 8th consciousness only have 5 consciousness, because they don't have particular functions. And how come they don't have any particular functions? How come your 8th consciousness don't have any particular functions? Because the 8th consciousness only interact with the present reality. They won't interact with the past, with the future. Let me give you an example. For example, because the 8th consciousness is like a banking consciousness, a storage consciousness, a repository of all the consciousness. But it itself, it does not determine. It itself is just like the teller at the front. At the teller, when you go to the teller and say, I want to deposit $500, the teller would not say, look, no, I want to check your old records, how much you have deposited. No, they won't go to the past. The teller would not say, wait a minute, I want to check your book, your past, yesterday. They don't. They just say, the teller just accepts it. And the teller would not say, no, I want to see your projections for the future. No. So they don't have any particular functions. The teller would not say, look, you deposit $500. How do you wish to use the $500? What is your desire to use the $500? The teller would not say that. The teller would not say, do you have any resolutions for 2018 for the kind of money you're using? So this teller would just have no desire, so particular functions, no desire, no resolution, no mindfulness. Mindfulness is when the teller receives it, the teller just count the money and put the money in. They won't particularly say, okay, you are depositing Canadian money now, why don't you consider changing it into American US dollars and put in the US dollars? They're not mindful of that. They have no right to tell her that your mind, 8th consciousness, is a storage consciousness. It stores good and bad. Everything you do bad, everything you do, all the malicious deeds, all the benevolent deeds, it's just stored in there. If you store all kinds of unwholesome deeds, you're going to be responsible one day. You know what's going to happen to you. If all your deeds, all your actions, it say all your money is malicious money, thousands of bad, money, you think you're okay? You're not okay. Because all these deeds will get to you through causality. Not God. God will not punish you. God will not, do anything on. If God can help you, you wouldn't be suffering. If Buddha cannot help you, if Buddha can help you, then he's already relieved you of all suffering. Because you walk your path. The Buddha only say, don't do that, you do this. The teacher cannot help you to write the examination and get you a good result. If every student, if the teacher can write examination for every student will get an A. No, he can't do that. So your eighth consciousness would not have any particular functions. So it would not have mindfulness. Your eighth consciousness do not have any concentration. Do not have any particular intelligence for anything. The teller would just, whatever you have done bad deeds, whatever you have done good deeds, indeterminate deeds, the teller only just put it in your account. No particular considerations, no reminder, no mindfulness, no resolutions, no desires, no planning, no budgeting. Can the teller do some budgeting for you? Only if the teller has certain particular idea in their mind. If the teller is instructed by his supervisor that he would like to suggest some insurance for you, then we say, have you considered $200 for insurance? Even that, he has to be permitted to do, because he or she cannot sell insurance at the counter, convincing you to use your $500 for insurance and $100 for other things. So no particular functions for your eighth consciousness. How about unwholesome functions? Can the teller say, where did your money come from? No. A friend of mine told me many, many years ago, that's about 25 years ago, he first immigrated to Canada, and he was a rich guy. So he put in maybe $1 or $2 million in his account, and then the second time, then he went to the bank and they said, I want $50,000. The teller said, wow, you want to withdraw $50,000? What do you use your money for? My friend got shocked. Why are you so nosy? This is my money. Why do you have to think about how do I spend my money? So your eighth consciousness, your teller, will not ask, how do you spend your money? They have no right. The teller has no right to check on whether you are using it in a wholesome way or an unwholesome way. It's not their right. They wouldn't be interested in doing that. So the eighth consciousness has no unwholesome functions, and for that reason, no wholesome functions. It just receives. How about indeterminate functions? Regret. How about regret? The eighth consciousness would not be regretful of anything. They just store. They wouldn't be regretful of anything. It just takes the function of storage, and it does not cultivate intelligence, and it has no particular discernment. It has no indeterminate functions, no regret, no drowsiness, no investigation, and no scrutiny. He will not investigate on your money, no scrutiny on your money, as long as you make sure that your money is not forced, is not a fake, bill. So your eighth consciousness only have omnipotent mental functions associated with it. But the most sensitive ones, the powerful ones, is the sixth consciousness, because it has 51 concomitant mental functions, 51 of them. So when we are doing meditation, when we are practicing the Buddhist method, Buddhist practices, we are actually using the sixth one. The sixth one can purify you until you become the Buddha. Your sixth ones can lead you down to hell and to all the vicious realms. We can say, are you under your own control? You can say yes, because that's your consciousness. But you can also say, no, it's not under my control, because my sixth consciousness is out of control. When I want to be greedy, I become greedy. When I want to cry, I want to cry. When I want to yell, when I want to be angry, I'm angry. When I'm jealous, I'm jealous. So what do you think? Is it under your control? Yes or no? If you're practicing mindfulness, it's more under your control than not. You practice, the person who's practicing meditation is the person that will gear his concentration to controlling all his consciousnesses. A criminal cannot control his consciousness. He could have killed on impulse. And then the defensive lawyer said, why do you want to do it? Why did you commit that crime? Privately, they talk. The criminal may usually say, I don't know, because he did something, so I just want to do this in return. So put your consciousness under control. So its nature is non-obscuring and indeterminate. It is unobscure because its own nature is not obscured by the mind-dependent Dharma that arises with it. It itself would not make a decision. And it is not like the ego consciousness, which is obscure. It doesn't even have an I in it. The eighth consciousness has no ego in it. Only the ego consciousness has. But the ego consciousness is always working with your storage consciousness to make things happen. The storage consciousness is a repository, a receptacle for all the things that you have done. Don't think that whatever bad deeds you have done, it does not matter. All store in your karma memory, in your computer. Everybody has a computer. Let's do an analogy. Everybody, it has a computer inside. All the good, small little good deeds that you have done, you think people will forget about it? A smile, a words of advice, a words of consolations, you think everything's stored in your computer. The slightest benevolent deed or the largest unwholesome deeds, everything gets stored like a teller. Everything's stored in there. But the eighth consciousness is unobscure. Why? It is not ego. The teller is not bad. The teller is only receiving. And when you want to get money, they just get the money. It is indeterminate, as we have just now. It is not regretful, it is not drowsy, it is not investigative, it is not scrutinizing. So what is the real state of object as perceived in reality by the eighth consciousness? It's just the reality itself. The reality of the money, the reality that you're coming in to store the money. So it's reality. Your eighth consciousness would not go to the past to investigate, would not go to the future to budget. Would the teller do that? No. It stores everything. Watch your mind. It stores every bad thought for you. That's the reason why the Buddha said, don't just watch your action, your speech. Watch your thought. Every thought counts. If every thought is a thought of benevolent, every thought is a thought of giving, of compassion, of working hard, of planning, of success, of confidence, you will carry it out. If every thought is a thought of egoistic idea, every thought is a thought of harmfulness, every thought is a thought of, I only want to better myself, not you, then you are cultivating every bad thought in your mind. Don't deposit bad thought through the teller. But is it easy to do that? You have to have training. Imagine how many bad thoughts you have in your mind every day that triggers. How does thought works? When I come to think of this word thought, how does it spell? T-H-O-U-G-H-T. And if we drop the O-U-G, it's T-H and H-T. What is that? It's thought linked by thought, except that not every thought is a T-H. The second thought could be H-T. Could be just the opposite of the first thought. The first thought is good, second thought is bad, third thought is, I don't know. How does your thought work? You may not even know that you trigger a bad thought. Oh, that man has done something. I don't like that man. I hate that man. You think it's just a thought? It's stored in your mind. And especially thought of what? Of greediness, of hatred, of love. You always have that thought. You don't even know about it. Your thought of greediness. Give me an example of thought of greediness. Do you have an example of thought of greediness? How greediness is involved? Well, it's just a general term. How does greediness involve with? The most obvious one is with a relationship. A man sees a woman sees a man, what kind of thought comes up? If a sensuous thought comes up, which is you think is natural, you think does not matter? No, it gets stored. When that thought store all the time, it will carry out into action. If a thought of hatred comes up, you don't like that man, you hate that man, you want to revenge. All these thoughts will link up to what? An action. What is that action would carry out what? Harmful acts. Fighting, hurting, killing. You name these things. You may not even know that you have those thoughts coming up. The Buddha wants us to mindful on every thought, to purify every thought. That's the purpose of coming for meditation, not just for health, for blessings. Watch every thought that you have. You require training to do that. You clearly understand my words, but when you go out to the world again after lunch, what do? You roll into the same you. I roll into the same me. What is your personality like? How do you think people look at you? People say, my personality is, sometimes I'm jealous. Sometimes I don't care about other people. I'm not as compassionate. And I lack of confidence. I have depression. I have anxiety. I have fear. What are all these thoughts? These are malicious thoughts that you have. How many good thoughts that you have? You should know your thought. Be mindful on every thought. If you watch every thought and know how every thought arises, sustain, maintain itself, and disintegrate, and you watch every one of these, and you know what is wrong and what is right, you're on your way to enlightenment. But some people are not even interested in watching their own thought. Some people are not interested in even analyzing what is right and what is wrong. They just do it on their ego. That's dangerous. That's why we roll into life and death samsara.